box. It's a little difficult with our audio here to do introductions, but if you wouldn't mind in the chat box writing your name, your program, your position, and then if you can think of something, something that you are looking to learn today, include that also. Then maybe if it's a question that is related to eGrants and Encore, we can have that question posed while Andrew and Kelly are with us. Otherwise, we'll come back to it when I'm presenting. So with that, Andrew, I think we are all set, and I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey. I think that you guys are really challenging me here this morning for an 8 a.m. start time. It's pretty rare that I'm in the office by 8 a.m. on most days. So
yep, most certainly.
I'll try and bring my A game here and give you some good information on eGrants. For those of you who are brand new, some of this information will be pretty helpful, I think. And then for those who have been program managers for a few months and may have had some experience navigating through eGrants, this will hopefully be some review, and maybe you'll find some new ways to do things. As from what I found is there's multiple ways to get things done in eGrants, which is the good news. So if you play around in there long enough and you make enough clicks, you'll eventually find what you're looking for, which is the good thing. So basically, once you log into eGrants, you'll notice sort of two different sections that they've got the website sectioned into. The first one of which is your grant applications, and where you actually view, write, submit your grants to the corporation. That's the top part here. And then they've got the bottom section reserved for the AmeriCorps portal. And this is the program director side of the My AmeriCorps portal. The members themselves have a completely different looking AmeriCorps portal, which is what makes it somewhat challenging when you're trying to communicate with members and troubleshoot their needs, which is what the help desk is really good for on their end. But just something to be aware of is that the My AmeriCorps portal for your end is going to look a little bit different than the members. Fortunately for our program's sake, I was a member for a couple years myself, and so I've still got my own login that I can get into the AmeriCorps portal with and be able to sort of troubleshoot and play around in there. So maybe consider creating an application for yourself and just sending it into your program and see what sort of access they can give you on the back end if you're looking to look and see what it looks like from the members' vantage point. But anyway, this is the PD side of things. The main interface here is going to be all on the left-hand side. A lot of different drop-down tabs here with potential applications, searching applicants, managing members, things like that. The main uses for the My AmeriCorps side are really going to be, getting your program up and running to actually receive applicants, being able to source applications, enroll members ultimately once you've done interviews and made selections on who you'd like to join your program, exiting members from the program either after their term of service has been completed, or unfortunately if they choose to leave early or if it's a compelling personal circumstance, you'll exit them from here as well. And then also doing slot conversions if that's something you go down and something you need to do, then you can do that from eGrants as well. So those are sort of the main uses for the My AmeriCorps side of eGrants. And to actually get up and running to receive applications, the first thing you can go to is the recruitment work basket down here is going to be your main tab for doing those sorts of things. And under the service opportunities list here, you've got pending applications, but then also, so these are folks who have already submitted an application to your program. And then service opportunities is where you can actually create a listing to show up on the external facing My AmeriCorps portal, so that when applicants are looking for different programs around the state of Wisconsin, they're filtering what they want to look for. For us, it's a health-focused program, somewhere in the state. Then this is where you create that listing of what they're going to see. So the thing that we have, we've only got two different listings because our program model hasn't changed a whole ton since we originally got our grant back in 2010. So the nice thing about the opportunity listings is you can just go in and edit them as the applications open up for your program for a certain year. So roughly every March or April when we open up our recruitment process, I'll come in here and edit, our start date, potentially our end date, some contact information if needed, and a few other pieces. But it definitely saves a lot of time just being able to edit an existing opportunity listing versus creating a new one. If you are a completely brand new program and you're wanting to, it's going to be your first listing, you'll click into here and you'll literally type in, what your program name is, what type of project you are, state and national, start date, end date, things like that. So you're really starting from scratch and building that base listing from that portion there. In terms of, looking at an existing listing, a lot of times we'll have our application start and end date at a certain point in time, and we'll say, well, we're accepting this date, and sometimes we'll have to modify that if we don't fill all of our slots. But let me just see, I think it might be on the next page here. So yeah, you'll see it now. So if you're opening up your recruitment, you obviously want to hit yes, and then they'll give you some date ranges to accept applications. Because our program start date is September 1 for this upcoming program year, we generally have, the first application deadline at least. We want to make sure that folks have enough time to get their applications in and get background checks and things like that. So we're putting that date in. It's still a little bit late, but it's in there for August. And so we just want to make sure that it's not listed as, October or November, so folks are procrastinating on their applications and not submitting them, not getting them into us because they think that, even though the program start date says 9/1, why are you accepting applications until November? So we may have to go back in and alter this if we don't fill all our slots by September 1, but hopefully that won't be an issue, and just something to keep in mind as you're creating this. So basically, this is how you create your listing. This is how you get yourself onto the AmeriCorps portal so that applicants can check you out and be able to learn a little bit more about your program. I think there are some character limitations within there so that you're not going to be able to give them a really comprehensive view of who you are and what you do, but it should definitely give them the basics to be able to say, okay, this is a program that I'm interested in. I'd like to at least apply and learn more with the conversation with the PD or some of the host sites. So that gets the ball rolling there, gets applications coming in the door. And the only thing to note here is that if you do create a new listing or edit an existing listing, you'll see this status bar where it's got, approvals, denials, and if you make an edit, it'll come through as pending because any opportunity listing first has to be approved by CNCS. So they'll take a look at what you're requesting to post onto eGrants, and then generally within 24 to 48 hours. It doesn't take a long time usually. The listing will be approved by them, and you'll be up and running and on the external portion of their website. So just keep that in mind if you're putting it out there. It may not show up instantaneously, but it'll be there, not too far after that. So then once you've got your program listing created, step 2 is sort of making sure that you've got some service sites listed so that when you do go about enrolling members, you can connect them to an actual host site. And so, again, there's a few different ways to do this. Once you've got your service locations into the system, you can click on Manage Service Locations. But if you're just setting them up, you should go to Manage Programs first, and then just select a program year. So if you're going to be this upcoming year, 2015, and you can search there. It'll bring up your program, and then you can edit operating sites there. You can view your service locations and be able to add new service locations to your program. So let's see what it says right now. So here are all the ones that we have listed in our program, but we're a statewide program, and our members serve at different host sites around Wisconsin. So each of the host sites that they potentially would be serving at are listed here. If you need to add a new one, you can go to this Create button down here and be able to add in a new service location that the member will be serving at for 2015. Make sure that their status is active so that when you're going and enrolling members and you're linking them up to a service site, it's actually showing and it's not inactive. So again, you can do that from the Manage Service Locations tab or the Manage Programs tab and just get down to this point in time. Again, multiple ways to get it done. And you'll see how we actually link up a member to a site during the enrollment process, but it's important to have the sites in there first so that when you go to enroll a member, they'll be in there. And it looks like we've got a question here. So Dominique asked if we have to create a separate listing for each host site or creating only one general listing and then connecting applicants to service sites separately. So we've created a separate listing for each host site. I don't know if that was the best way to do it or if that's mandatory, but that's how it was set up by an original program director for the Health Corps program, and so we've just gone along with that. I mean, we have one general listing for our program on the AmeriCorps portal. I can tell you that. So, you know, we have the Wisconsin Health Corps program, and that's what applicants are applying to. They can't specifically apply to, you know, Bridge Community Health Clinic or Children's Health Alliance of Wisconsin. They've got to come to our, you know, main program umbrella first, and then we source the applications onto our host sites. Maybe that's what you're asking. But feel free to let me know if that didn't answer your question.
That did. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So once you've got your service listing up and running and you've got your host sites or your service locations, as eGrants calls them, input into the system, the next step, you know, after you've contacted applicants that come through and, you know, selected and determined which ones you want to have serving your program, you can go about enrolling them. And so maybe I'll go back to just the actual applications here. You can either search submitted applications if you know that you're looking for a specific first and last name, or you can go back to your recruitment work basket, or I think even your SNN work basket. They show up in a lot of different places. So the nice thing that eGrants will do is when somebody actually submits an application through the external facing My AmeriCorps portal, you'll get an email to the email account that's linked up here, and it'll say, you know, application submission, and I can actually show you what that went through here, either your recruitment work basket or your again, not sure what that acronym stands for, but your SNN work basket, and then it'll come through on the last page. Scroll down here, you know, all the different applicants, get some information on them, and actually enroll the member in the program. That's when you would go to your state and national work basket and then actually select them. So if we were, for example, just, and actually we did select this individual, and so again on the status bar here, we'll get to this in a little bit, but once you've actually made a selection of a member that you want to enroll in the program, eGrants will send a notification to that member for them to log into their My AmeriCorps portal. They'll be able to check the status of every program they've applied to, and they'll be able to see, oh, hey, the Wisconsin Health Corps has extended me an offer. And so they can go into their side and actually accept the offer on their end, and then it'll come back to you as a program manager to enroll them. So let's just pick somebody different. So let's say we're going to select Ellie. You'll see their entire application shows up here on this top bar, and then there's also an opportunity at the very last tab to select. So once you've made your determinations on members, you'll go into your recruitment work basket, or you can search their first and last name through the submitted applications tab to them and go to the selection tab. And you'll see here the overall recommendation is they're selected for service, you know, certify, then you hit submit, and that would send that notification to the applicant that you've extended an offer for them to serve in your program for the upcoming year. So you do again have to wait for them to accept that before they'll come off of your recruitment work basket list. Like they'll still be listed there as that gentleman Douglas Moss was for our program. We're waiting for him to accept that offer, and so that'll be sitting there. And then you can see pending enrollments under the SNN work basket tab. If you go to pending enrollments, these are 3 folks who we've extended offers to, and they've accepted the offer. I told you it was early. So you select them, they accept it, and then it comes back to you to actually enroll them. So if you wanted to, you know, enroll them, you can then go into their name here under the pending enrollments tab, and then you as a program director will go in on your end and enter in everything underneath placement information. So they'll have completed up to here, and then placement information is for you to enter what the program year is. Application comes in, so you'll select their host site from the drop-down list and their slot type of full-time, half-time, etc. You'll certify it, and then once you hit enroll, that's when they actually go into your program as an enrolled member. And so when you go, for example, and then the thing that we do on our end is just we do all of our enrollments post-orientation so that we know that we've seen them in person, they've showed up, they've committed to the year of service, at least for the orientation. So they've been in the program for a couple of days. We've been able to meet them face to face. You don't want to enroll them prior to the start of the year, and then they decide a week before the program starts that they don't want to be in the program, and they're choosing a different job or choosing a different AmeriCorps program. So you just want to make sure that that's all on the up and up, and because as soon as you enroll them, you have to make the hit on your retention. So be very careful about when you actually do that final enrollment piece. It's okay to send the invitations out. It's okay for them to accept the invitations. But then that final piece here under the pending enrollments, just make sure that you've actually, they've made some sort of commitment to the program like we do. They showed up at orientation, so we know that they're serious and they're ready to serve. And again, make sure the background checks are done, the eligibility forms are completed prior to the start date that you've got listed on that enrollment form for the member.
Andrew,
so that takes care of. Yeah.
I have a
couple questions from coming
yeah, no
in.
problem.
So I think one from Dominique is whether you have to create a separate listing for each, or if you have to follow that route to enroll someone, or what happens if they use a resume other than an online application. Just to comment quickly before you answer anything about that question. So from our end, the corporation has recently sent out guidance related to paper enrollment forms, which would be generally used in cases when a member didn't have access to the enrollment form themselves. And also that happens to be the case oftentimes when members will apply through a resume or a paper application or such like that. Programs might keep all the process at the member end in paper. And now for this coming year, and the deadline has actually already passed, any program that would need to use those paper enrollment forms for the trust, the National Service Trust, they would have to have approval. They'd have to make a request through us, and then it's depending on what you're funding, whether it's competitive formula, then you would need possibly approval through the corporation as well to use those paper trust enrollment forms.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think that was the guidance that I had seen recently too, is that they're saying we're shifting away from the paper enrollments and exit forms, do as much as we can online, and you'll need a special exemption if you want to do a paper enrollment. So
exactly.
For us, even if our sites are recruiting members on their own, we have a couple of sites that do a lot of local ads and a lot of local recruitment to universities and things like that. They may find a member on their own through one of their own advertising listings, and then they can do interviews with that person and explain to them about AmeriCorps, but at some point in time that person still has to come back and submit an application through eGrants so we can ultimately enroll them into the portal and make sure that they're part of the program, they're eligible for the loan forbearance request that go through on that site and all those other aspects of the program.
Great.
So additional questions from Dominique? You're killing me here.
I know. I'm sorry, Andrew.
That's okay.
I've been making people go online. It just seems like kind of a hassle when I have these nice resumes, but that's fine. So you answered my second question, and now my third question was transferring returning members.
Yeah, great question. So what we've done for returning members, and my memory is going to be a little bit hazy here because we do it once a year, but I believe we have to first exit them from the current grant year. So we've got to make sure that all their paperwork is in. We've got their end of year review, all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted in terms of what they need to exit the current program year. And then I believe they have to go in and actually resubmit an application to your program, and then you can select them again for the 2016 or 2015-2016 program year. So there may be an easy way to do it, but that's how we've always done it in the past. Is you can't enroll someone in two different programs at once. So at the very least, you've got to exit them out of the original, the current program year, and then you may be able to just go in and look at, search their application again and enroll them into the next year. But I honestly don't remember if they've got to submit a new application or not. But basically, just remember, just exit them and then either search their application and see if you can enroll them through that selection process or the selection tab right off the bat, or just see if they've got to submit a new application.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Yep. That's a good question. It'll be also different than, there is a way to do that in Encore where you're able to bring members into the following program year. But I'm not aware myself of any way to do that in eGrants. So, Andrew, you would know better.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a little hazy on that because there was one year where we had a member who was in the program and then was signing up for a second year, but she got married over that summer and had a name change. And so then for all of her enrollment documents and all of her paperwork, we had to change that over to her new last name, and so I think we just had her submit a new application because we wanted to make sure that was in the system and accurately reflecting, her education award and all the other benefits she was getting. But then for a member that doesn't have that situation, you might just be able to select them for the new year after you exit them from a different program. So anyway, exiting members is sort of the last piece of the puzzle here, and you can go again to that SNN work basket here. And once you're within 30 days of your end of the program year, if you go to this pending exits tab, you'll be able to see all the folks who have an expected completion date within 30 days. So this will auto-populate for you here on the pending exits tab, and you'll be able to see who's completed their exit form in the My AmeriCorps portal, which is really nice. So you can say, okay, well, we've got a couple members here who are approaching their end date and they haven't done this yet, so let's get them on it. I think we've done a decent job about getting the word out, but still a couple stragglers. So go to your pending exits tab here if you've got members who aren't exiting early and are just going through that standard AmeriCorps exit at the end of the service term, and you'll be able to, again, make sure that they've done their exit form here. And then you can either just click on the member right away. This person's filled out their form. You'll see all the stuff that they've already completed. Your action starts here, where you certify that they're not leaving the program in spite of due diligence on your end to obtain an exit. Enter in the number of hours they've served from Encore, always rounding down, and then type in their completion date, their education award status, whether they're eligible for that. And then this question, of course, the member performing satisfactorily, that I believe impacts their ability to serve in subsequent years with other programs. So, again, this will sort of go back to their member exit reviews from you and their host site to say, well, this person didn't complete any of the work they were supposed to do. They never turned in reports. They were a terrible member, so they didn't perform satisfactorily. That's sort of the extreme. But hopefully 99.9% of the time, the member will have done what they need to do, and then you can approve their exit. So you can use sort of that form to go about it. You can also go to Manage Members, and you can select a program year. So we'll select the current year, and you'll see all of our members here. And so it doesn't tell you whether or not they've confirmed, but if their exit form isn't going to be released for them automatically by eGrants. They're not going to show up as a pending exit if you're exiting somebody in January and your program year ends in August. So you'll have to go to the Manage Members tab instead and click on a member. And we've already done this, so it's not going to show up. But there will be a little box where it'll say Unlock Exit Form, and it'll give you an option to actually unlock the eGrants exit form for the member, so that they can complete that if they're exiting early or exiting for a compelling personal circumstance. And again, you won't see it listed here because we've already done that. But Either way, you can also exit the member from this route as well. You can update their type, exit them, and it'll take you to that same form as we saw before. This person has not completed your exit form, as you can see, so we'd have to do that first, obviously. But assuming they had completed that form, you can also exit them from the Manage Members portion just as easily as you can from the SNN work basket. So multiple ways to get it done. And then I guess just lastly, the only other piece I'll mention is this SNN reports is kind of cool and something that we've played around with. If you're in eGrants, your quarterly reports to Serve Wisconsin, you can go to the SNN reports and you'll be able to see a few different ones that we like. The enrollment approval cycle time report is kind of a cool one, and you can enter in your program year for that, and you'll be able to see and ensure that you've enrolled all your members within the 30-day time window. So it'll show you here, if I can get this out of the way. Oh, there we go. So you'll be able to see how many days it took to actually enroll this individual in eGrants from their enrollment date, and to ensure that everybody's within 30 days. So you can look at, enrollment approval report, quarterly reports that Serve Wisconsin has, ask you for your enrollment rate in eGrants and your retention rates. You'll be able to run both of those reports there, which is really nice. And then a member roster report is pretty cool too, and they'll give you a lot of different information from the member roster reports. It'll show you, who's been exited and earned an education award to this point in your program. So you can see we've had 3 members that have completed their hours and have exited the program, and then folks who are expecting to earn an education award but are still currently serving and active in the program. I would imagine that would show up too. So you're able to sort of run those different reports and see things from there. But that's sort of the quick and dirty overview of eGrants. Any other questions?
Thanks, Andrew. We do have another question, and I can't answer it myself. So the question is that Steve has heard there's a way to contact prospective members through the portal, the AmeriCorps portal, even if they haven't completed an application for your program. So is there a way how to do that, and if so, how?
Yeah, I believe as long as they've got an account on eGrants, I believe you can use the search potential applicants, and you can type in their first and last name, and then that'll come up. And I've never actually used this, so I'd be curious to see how it works. But I believe that's the way you can do it. So you can do that, and you'll see all the various Andrews who have a active application. Obviously, you want to narrow your search down a little bit more than that, but if you've got a first and last name, I believe you can go to that search potential applicants rather, and find them through this methodology here, and then you can send them an email from your program to say, hey, we've got an opportunity. I think you'd be really great for our program. You might be interested. Let's send you an email and be able to communicate with them that way. So you'll do that under the Search Potential Applicants tab. But you've got to already know about them for the most part.
I'll just mention too, very quickly, Andrew, you mentioned on the SNN reports, state and national reports, the enrollment time cycle report. The number there that shows in number of days is actually, the way eGrants counts it, 31 days is actually being compliant with the 30-day enrollment period. So hopefully programs will never be that close, but if it ever becomes an issue, when we go and check for performance, and that being one of the performance criteria, that's how we rate that, is 31 days.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. And then there's the slot conversion stuff, but I think they can go to you guys as program officers if they want to do slot conversions or need to do that, but it's under that Manage Programs tab as well.
Yep. I'll unmute all the lines just in case we have any other questions for Andrew right now. All right. Well, if anyone has further ones, feel free to type them in the chat box, and we'll try to address them as they come forward. Let's see. And I will turn it over to Kelly quickly. Thank you, Andrew, for doing a wonderful job with eGrants. I know it's a difficult system to get around every once in a while, so we appreciate you showing all of us a little bit more about it.
My pleasure.
Thanks. So Kelly, you should see a request there now to make you a presenter.
Yep, I see it starting here.
Okay, wonderful.
All right. Do you see the Encore main page?
Yes, we sure do.
Excellent. All right. Well, first I just want to say, Andrew, that was awesome. There were so many notes that I was taking along the way of reminders for myself. So that was really wonderful. And so hopefully we can have some great time in Encore now, eGrants to Encore. So. I wanted to start just here on the very first page because I am going to go into 1516 in a test program so that we can see kind of what things will look like here starting into this new year. And here we go. All right. So in Encore, I kind of was figuring out maybe a good format for us to walk through some things on Encore, and I decided we'll just go left to right and kind of go along some of the main tabs that I think are either really important to make sure that you have some familiarity with, or are the things that you do once a year and then you kind of forget about, but sometimes it's really hard to remember those things every year. And in fact, it was really good as I was planning for this, as I remembered, oh yeah, that's that piece that I missed that one year. So the nice thing about Encore is so many of the times you can kind of just go back through and troubleshoot, trying to figure out where some of those things are. I have found a lot of times where I missed was something in this first tools tab. So under administrative tools, there's a couple of things that you'll use, but these are really those probably going to use in the very beginning of your program year and then not use as much after that. So one of the things as you go down, user permissions is one of those areas that sometimes it's really easy to forget to use these. When you look at the AmeriCorps members and what tabs they have on their Encore account, this is where you can have more things on there or take more things off. So for instance, right now kind of everything is checkboxed, and at least for me, there's not reason why they need all of these things. So I would go through very, very specifically to see what AmeriCorps members need. They obviously don't need kind of financials information. Scheduled reports, is that something that feels good for you? I take off almost all this stuff, essentially. The two things that we do always leave on there is the civic engagement activities and the great stories, because we do have all of our members submitting those. And then, of course, the time tracking. That part is really important to make sure is on there. One of the areas that I would suggest you uncheck for sure is the request help form. Because there have been times where we've had people get real excited and start requesting all kinds of help and then have ended up getting charged for some of that, and I'd rather have people come through us so that we can help problem solve, because sometimes there's pretty simple answers. Other times we do really need to go to a help version of things, but it can cut down on the amount of requesting kind of going out directly to OnCorps. So that's one of the areas. And then the other part that's really a once-a-year setup is a timesheet. I actually would go to the timesheet setup first. There's a standard and an enhanced. I've never had to use anything more than the standard. So I would just click on that and save it, and then that will be kind of the very typical way that Corps members enter their hours in their timesheets. The one that I have always found a little bit trickier is the timesheet date. And this one, entering start date, ending date, that information is great. The timesheet period, our Corps members get they get their check every other week, so we always do biweekly, but that really depends on your own organization. The trick that I always get into is the due date interval and how to make sure that it's set up in the right way. The wonderful thing about this is if I mess up, which I usually do because it doesn't quite go the way I want it to, every time that you enter new information, it just overwrites it. So you have several, you can just keep trying until you kind of get it exactly right. So let's, I'll just put in some dates here so that you can kind of see what that ends up looking like. If they have to turn in their timesheet and have that approved and submitted on one Friday, and then the next Friday is when they get paid or something like that, when the supervisor has to have things approved. So there's a couple different ways to do the timesheet. Here's then where it tells you every time when the member submission due, when the period ends, and when the supervisor approval date is. Gives you a good outline of what that's going to look like and if that's right. If it's not right, then you just go back and re-enter some of this information to try and get it right. Because I know sometimes trying to figure out exactly what you want it to look like for the member is important. And when you want your supervisors to make sure that they have the approval due is, of course, very important. So that's one of those things that, and once you do it once, then you're set for the year. So those are the main things in the administrative tools that you will need to be looking at. From there, I usually go directly to the manage records. The program information, one of the pieces in program information that is important to do that's related to your timesheet is down here where it says timesheet training categories, timesheet service categories. This is what we end up leaving ours as is training and direct service, but if you have different language that you use or different categories, or you have multiple categories of different kinds of service, different kinds of training, this is a great place to enter that so that Corps members can directly input that into their timesheet. Program directors for managed records is just your opportunity to enter, of course yourself will be here, but any other people who are new program directors that would need access. In our organization, that also ends up being folks that are working on the financial side of things so that they can be working with the reporting and some of that information as well. So that will really depend on your organization as to what you need for the program directors. And then it goes to service sites. And making sure that your service sites are in here and then that they will get connected to your members. Has basic information about it. It does include some of the congressional and districts and things like that. So it will be helpful to have that information ahead of time as you are doing it. Can be very helpful. Site supervisors, the best way to think about site supervisors is literally anybody who will be supervising timesheets. And so if you need to add new site supervisors, this is a place to do it, very basic information for them. There will be a place for the members that you need to list who their supervisors are that will be approving timesheets. So if somebody is approving timesheets, this is where they would need to go for for their information to make sure that they have access to OnCore and then are able to get connected directly to those members. And then finally, the members. This is where we spend a lot of time in the first few weeks trying to make sure that our core members are all set up. So the first thing that you will end up doing is just adding new AmeriCorps members. We've done this a couple of different ways to make sure that we're getting accurate information for core members. One of the ways that we've literally done is had a kind of a computer set up that's just on this page, and I sit there kind of having a rotation of new core members coming in and filling out this information to get it all correct. That way they can make their username and password, so their login right here, and then their password, so that they make sure to have all of that information right away. It is really important to make sure that all the asterisks are completely filled out. Every once in a while, there's actually a required field that doesn't have an asterisk next to it, so it will give you a, like, you have to complete this thing too if you don't have all that completed data. Making sure that, let's see, the service start date and the expected service end date is also really important. Obviously, you have to put that in, but you will want to as well because it does give a great way for timesheets to be able to indicate how many hours per week a core member still needs to serve in order to complete their hours. And then this is where the supervisor, so knowing which supervisor will be for each core member is going to be right here. Supervisor, there's an opportunity for more than one supervisor. So if you need two people to look at timesheets in order to approve them, this would be the way to do that. And then has this AmeriCorps member been enrolled in the AmeriCorps portal? Yes or no, we always do the portal first so that we can just check yes through all of these. Save them, and then your member is will show up. They will end up being in a list. So here's the Kelly test for one, but it will end up having a whole list of your AmeriCorps members. Once you get all of your AmeriCorps members in here, then going to the checklist for each core member will be really important. This is a great place to double check where your member files have the paper information that is needed, as well as making sure then that this checklist reflects that is really important. So for the member application, making sure that's here, the eligibility form, making sure to double check. It's great because it already gives you the things to be looking at. So making sure all sections are completed and signed and dated. Member has high school diploma or equivalent, and these are all just check boxes. And then enrollment form. You end up with all of this information until publicity release. Those are all the things from publicity release form to the top from member application. In the very beginning of the year, that's all you have, because the rest of it ends up being a midterm evaluation, so halfway through the year, and then end of term and exiting, and knowing that timesheets are up to date. Once you have all of that information, then you just click on all those. If you have full-time members, you'll also need to do the healthcare waiver, child care waiver, and child care request forms for your program. Then those checklists then will stay for checklists. And so it will always give the opportunity to be as complete as possible for all of your members. Let's see. And what we have found is it's best to just do that pretty closely to when we have put in new members into OnCore. It tends to just be better to get it kind of all done at that same time. So then if we continue going along our ribbon on the top here, the next area is reporting. I'm actually not going to spend much time on reporting our financials. Those are like whole other trainings on their own. But it is good to just be familiar with the kinds of things that are in the program reports and the service reports to know that's where you want to, do your reporting for your progress reports and your performance measures. And then the service reports, that's where you can see, we use very regularly the great stories and civic engagement, so we're going back in there to make sure that we have all of those from our members. So those are really great, great places to be able to see those things, but not ones, we don't use that real often, just when we know that we've made some deadlines for people to get some of those done. And then financials, very similar. You want to probably be pretty, you know what's in here, know how to use it, but that really is a different training to make sure that you get all of those things done as needed. The other one that I did want to really make sure that we hit is the time tracking. So one of the things, even before we go into what AmeriCorps does specifically here, just making sure that everyone knows kind of the back and forthing that can happen with members in their timesheets. So one of the things that we do right away is we send out the link for their AmeriCorps login. One of the things that we have certainly found is that it is very hard to Google AmeriCorps and get the right page for a login page. And so we make sure that we send that separately and then say, everybody save this as a favorite. And we really make that a big deal so that everybody will know how to get and access their timesheets easily. Once they are in it and they're filling out their timesheets, when they submit it, it does it generates an email directly to their supervisor. Their supervisor then has the opportunity to approve it or to reject it. And in the rejection, if that is the case, that there's a little box to write comments in it, and that goes directly back to the core member. This is super helpful. Instead of having to generate separate emails, you can just type it right into that box. And then if they change it and approve it again, and submit it again, there certainly have been times when we've had to reject it again. So you can go back and forth as many times as you need in order to have the core member make sure that they're reflecting their service hours correctly. One of the things that we have found is that if we can get core members to really do their timesheets accurately and well in the first 6 weeks, they'll do it well the rest of the year. It is when we kind of were like, oh, well, yeah, okay, they need to go back and change that, but we'll make sure that it's just a little bit different, like really having them, not being wishy-washy at all, but really making sure that they're accurately describing the activities that they're doing, not in super detail, but in enough chunks that we know exactly what kind of service they're doing every day. And so we, in the beginning, end up doing a lot of rejections, and then it totally gets better throughout the year. So, so that would be one of the things that we've certainly found is that back and forth thing is certainly worth it in the beginning. Let's see. So in this time tracking, this is where there is some great opportunities for making sure, as the program director, knowing exactly where core members are, what kind of you have the ability to do with your timesheets of your members. So filter member timesheets is a pretty simple opportunity to just look for specific members' timesheets or specific time periods. So if you are looking at a specific time period and saying, who, 3 weeks ago, who submitted this when? This would be the page that you would want to go to in order to be able to find that. And then the other one that I love is this member total hours by date. It's not going to give anything here because there are no members started. What it does do is essentially list every single core member, how many hours they've completed in each of their categories, and how many hours per week they need to do for service hours in order to complete their 1,700 hours. This becomes a huge, huge tool when your program is a September through August. Then it comes, April, May, June, making sure that core members are really on track to get to their 1,700 hours and the hours that they have that they really need to make sure that they're completing. So this is a great field. That was the member total hours by date. You can also do it by service site. You can do it by month. There's lots of different ways to do it. Print member timesheets. If there's some reason that you need printouts of them, that's the place to do that. We have not found many times that we need that one, but for your particular program, there may be. The unlocked member timesheets can be important when there was an uh-oh by a supervisor. So if the supervisor realized that they approved a submitted timesheet from a core member and it had something incorrect on it, this is the way to go back and have that supervisor be able to send it back and make the changes and have the core member make the changes. So unlocked member timesheets can be fantastic when you need it. I would also say use it very sparingly because obviously as things are submitted and kind of final, when you unlock that and it indicates that it's been unlocked, if that happens often to a core member or to lots of core members, that can certainly be a red flag as people are looking at different timesheets. So just making sure that it's probably not something you want to use willy-nilly, but use it when you need to. And then batch member timesheets, missing member timesheets, both good programs to run when you need them. Missing member can be really good, although a lot of times notifications, using notifications now, you get a lot of that information right on your main page. Directories and calendar rosters are probably a good thing to be able to have, particularly at very large sites. We actually don't use the calendar function very much ourselves. But why don't I kind of pause and see if there are any questions?
If you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat box. I've been answering a few as we go, Kelly.
Okay.
So I have most of them answered. I am in the process of answering Steve's question, and I think I can follow up with him later regarding that one. But if anyone else has questions, please feel free to ask those in the chat box, and we'll make sure Kelly answers them at some point.
All right. Well, then I'll just kind of do one of the last functions that I wanted to point out that can be really helpful, particularly as you have more years, and if you are supervising core members as a site supervisor as well as being program director, there are a couple of buttons that can be helpful. One of those is over here where it says state and program year, Wisconsin 2015-2016. Do you want to go back to the current? So if you're looking at how did I do timesheets last year, you can just click on the change and then look at which year you want to go back to, and you can log in there. And then you can have the ability to kind of go back and forth a little bit, which I have found to be very helpful, particularly in that information that you're just inputting once a year. It can be very helpful. The other place to do that, so program and year toggle, that's the exact same button as that change. The other piece that can be helpful is that supervisor toggle, which I mentioned, sometimes you are both a site supervisor or a program director, and you have multiple kind of different roles. And so this is a way to log in with different different levels of supervisor or different kind of titles, so that you can kind of go back and forth on that if you need it. So I want to make sure and point those out, because that can, otherwise it can be a little bit clunky to try and log out, log it back in. One of the things, I don't know if you have figured this out yet or not, but if you just click the red X at the top corner of your screen when you're getting out of Encore, and then you would like to log back in immediately, usually you cannot do that and have to wait a period of time before you can log back in. If you use the actual log out button, then you can usually get back in. So it took me probably about 3 years to figure that out. So hopefully that helps somebody, since I would oftentimes try and get back in and not be able to right away. All right, and I think that's the main functions that I really wanted to cover for starting off and really getting those members in and going. So yeah, any other last questions?
Thank you, Kelly. That was wonderful. We do have one question from Steve about the total hours graph. And if I remember correctly, when you run that report, it'll require you to export it, and then you should be able to see it. I don't know if you've done that yourself, Kelly, or you would know the answer to that.
Yep, it is an exported graph. Every time I look at that, I'm like, ooh, a graph, that'll be cool. And then it actually has not given me the information that has been helpful for me. But it's definitely something that you can use this export button over here to be able to open up and then have it, I think then it just ends up being a separate report or spreadsheet. So.
Wonderful, thank you. The only other thing, Kelly, would you mind showing us the help tab? I don't, real quickly, did you go through that?
Sure.
If you wouldn't mind going to the help resources, just clicking on that. Just to mention that AmeriCorps does webinars fairly regularly, and they maintain a nice history here of webinars that they have done, tutorials and such. Their help desk is very responsive, and they do a fairly good job of making sure they have trainings for many of the functions that are available in AmeriCorps. It has a lot of features that you can use to tailor it to your program. A lot of our programs use AmeriCorps very differently, so I would encourage you to just play around, try to see what works best for you, your site supervisors, your members, and really get it tailored to what you need it to do. And if there's a function you want AmeriCorps to have that, or a piece that you think is making your job a lot more difficult that AmeriCorps might easily change, I encourage you to either bring that to us or to AmeriCorps. They're usually pretty good at listening to feedback and changing them for upcoming years. They have made a fair number of changes for the 15-16 year, one of which is hopefully that before members are actually enrolled, that they won't be able to log any time in their timesheets. So it's just creating more functionality, more things as the field provides feedback to them. So any last questions for Kelly before we move forward? If so, please mention your name in the chat box or write the question in the chat box. Well, thank you, Kelly. I very much appreciate you going through AmeriCorps. I guess everyone seems to be very clear on what they're looking to have AmeriCorps do for them. So thanks so much. I very much appreciate you taking some time out of this a busy time during member startup and such. So it's very much appreciated.
Great. Well, it was a pleasure to do it, and good luck, everyone.
Thank you. All right. I will just move over here real quickly. There is one piece I wanted to share with you all quickly related to AmeriCorps and e-grants. We're going to try to move pretty fast here as we got an hour left of our time. I will do my best to navigate this webinar. I appreciate the little grace that you guys are all giving me navigating this webinar for the first time. And I will see. Okay. So just quickly in Encore, if you guys aren't seeing this, please let me know. But in Encore, on this right-hand side here, they have all of these webinars and trainings, upcoming ones that they'll offer live. So for where you can possibly get your questions, and stay tuned to, this is the home page as to any upcoming trainings that Encore will be offering. So that's the presentation here. And wonderful. So welcome everyone. Once again, we'll continue to go on to this new PD orientation. I already gave an introduction in the beginning, but just some of the things that we'll go through now are some of the basics related to the corporation, Serve Wisconsin, the timeline and such. We already did a tour of the electronic systems. I'm going to spend hopefully the majority of the time showing you where resources are that we really want you to be familiar with. They will likely have all the answers to your questions. We know there's a lot of resources in different places, but hopefully with this tour you'll become familiar where they are, and you'll at least get a sense of where, if you have a question, where you might start to look to find that answer. And then I will just lastly remind everyone of some of the requirements as you're about to be onboarding members. Some of you may have August 15th start dates, some of you may have September 1st. So as we get into that, we just want to hammer home some of those requirements that we have for you. So I asked you at the beginning what you're hoping to learn out of this session. If you have any more hopes for that outside of things that you saw in Encore and eGrants, feel free to type those in the chat box. We already saw the wonderful tour from eGrants and Encore, and Kelly did not mention, or she did not go into detail about the program reporting pieces, and I think that's perfectly fine. I have this slide up there because there are very good resources. As when I get into WIGU, I'll show you more about that, but there's a very good instructions document that we've prepared for you all when it comes time for progress reporting. Whether that be programmatic or financial, it does a good job of detailing what is needed. And you'll see up at the top there that the due dates are specified in Agreement Addendum Number 1. I'll also mention that all of the requirements or a lot of the requirements for Encore are also mentioned in Agreement Addendum Number 1. So Kelly showed you briefly that member documentation checklist that each member has, and that is one of the items that's mentioned in Agreement Addendum Number 1. So if you're kind of wondering, I don't know all these things that I need to do for Encore, refer to Agreement Addendum Number 1, and that will be where you can find some of those, along with other requirements that we have for you. And I can show you, once we get into WIGU, where you can find those progress reporting instructions. So Kelly showed you those, help resources. You have to be logged in to actually access those help resources. If you ever find that you do not have access to Encore, or you'd like to have someone else have access to Encore, feel free to reach out to your assigned program officer and they'll work that out for you. So I will post this presentation and hopefully the recording on Wigio in some short time. But those two links there are actually links to presentations in Wigio. Andrew, the Embracing eGrants presentation is a lot of material similar to what Andrew covered, but it's kind of step-by-step going through. And then the AmeriCorps portal training example presentation goes through some of the pieces of the AmeriCorps portal that Andrew didn't necessarily get to related to the member side of the portal. So probably helpful resources for you as you start to use those with your members. So here we just have the very brief history of national service timeline. It's obviously a little too condensed for us all to view, but I'll do my best to go through most of the timeline with you all. So some main points here. The National Service Act of 1990 was the act that created the Commission on National and Community Service, which was then later merged with another agency to create the Corporation for National Community Service, which is what we know as today. So there are grants they grant to us, and then you all are sub-grantees through us, Serve Wisconsin. So that law, the National and Community Service Act of 1990, was signed by President H.W. Bush. And then the National and Community Service Trust Act in 1983 was created, which is what created AmeriCorps and CNCF. And it was made to expand opportunities for Americans to serve their communities. Then VISTA and NCCC, the National Civilian Community Corps, became part of CNCF, became part of AmeriCorps at that point. And that was signed by President Clinton. Later, then, President Bush requested that Congress expand AmeriCorps by 50% to 75,000 members per year. And that goal was reached shortly after 2 years after his request. And then after that, in the Serve America Act of 2009, really expanded national service and the programs administered by CNCF. That act simply amended the National and Community Service Act of 1990, and President Obama was the president who signed that act into law in April 2009, and kind of changed the focus of those service opportunities. So going through just this chart does a good job of presenting kind of the organizational flow of funding. So you have the corporation at the top, then it goes, you can see AmeriCorps, and in smaller text, there's AmeriCorps State and National. So that's what will be familiar to you all. National, that AmeriCorps State and National, we're certainly AmeriCorps State. National just means, national directs, which you see on the right-hand side there. And then branching off, you have AmeriCorps NCCC, as I just went through, AmeriCorps Vista, very different, but similar at the same time, service opportunities to what your programs are like. And then up in the top left, Senior Corps, and we should probably have a logo here also, a Social Innovation Fund. Senior Corps certainly has other smaller programs under that, and are also likely serving in your communities. So it's a good idea if you have the opportunity to learn more about them so that you're able to collaborate them more efficiently in your communities. So I have, I guess, brief descriptions of those, but we'll go over that. This is a PD orientation tradition to simply show that it is not pronounced AmeriCorps. It's AmeriCorps, and feel free to correct people as they mispronounce them or however you so choose. Use this slide, carry the zombie around if you'd like, however works for you and your program. Also, there's a lot, when you're new, there's a lot to learn, certainly, outside of just requirements and different pieces. But this language is a little bit different, and we ask that you try to navigate it as gracefully as possible. We won't wash your mouth out with soap when you do say things wrong, but just the language is a little bit different. So when you're communicating with your host sites and your members, it's important that you start off right and make this language very clear so that as it goes down, that it maintains this clarity that members actually are serving, that they're not working, and that they're receiving a living allowance and not being paid. So I think as you as program directors and program staff start to use this language more and more, I think you'll see your members start connecting to your core a little bit better, being more identified with AmeriCorps and not just with feeling like they're at an internship with a local nonprofit. So just some encouragement to start using those. So Wigio, we'll move to that right away because this is where a lot of resources will be. I'll bounce back and forth, possibly to the presentation in this. Just one moment as I move to this new screen. So here we are on Wigio. I'm going to make sure you all are seeing this, as I am. Yes, wonderful. So last night I posted a lot of things on Wigio, went through some of the program resources. I would encourage you, so I'm here using Internet Explorer. I've noticed that Firefox and Google Chrome, or maybe just a newer browser, tends to work better with Wigio. You'll see here some of my functions are blacked out, but I can't really see them. Things just look a little funny in Internet Explorer, but having that be the way that it is, I'll still show you. So this is the feed first off. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. Wigio will, once you have an account, it will send you emails based on your preferences. It's great that it sends you emails, but we really, if you're using Wigio on a purely email basis, we want you to move forward from that. We want you to be logging in regularly, say once a day, checking the feed. It's very familiar. If any of you use Facebook or such, it becomes very familiar for you with this, at least with the feed portion. So you'll see things, it's in chronological order as you go through things that are being posted here. One of the functions that is pretty nice here is you can write a reply in comment form there. You have preferences, whether you want to notify people based on those preferences. and hopefully all these functions are available to you. We have a little different roles as organizers of this group, but I would imagine most of this is the same, but if not, please feel free to comment on that. So then you can also, let's see, you can also post other things related to that. And there's one function that I'm trying to show you all here as well. Oh, this here. So when a file is actually posted, so this is a document, it's a Word document, you have the option to download, view, edit, share, things like that. I would encourage you, if it's a Word document, to download it, because if you edit it, it's probably not what you're looking for. It opens up this Wigio editing software, and that's probably not what you're necessarily looking for. So it's loading up here. So this is that document just in edited form through Wigio. If you download it, you'll actually get the full document. But this is the piece that I wanted to show most of you, is show in folder. So it can be confusing. All these things are popping up on the feed, but you're not really sure where they're at. If you want to, we try to keep the program resources and most of the things we post to Wigio well organized. But if you have trouble finding something, you see it on the feed and you want to know where it is, you just click show in folder, and it will load up where that specifically is in the folder. Yeah, so this loads a little odd in Internet Explorer. Sorry about that. This will look better in other browsers. But you'll see here now, up at the top here, you have the root list, I guess is what you could call it. So this is, if you were wondering where that document was that you were looking for, you know, now it's almost much like Windows, where you go through a series of folders and then you're finally at the folder where the document is stored in. And then you'll see this is the document that I had selected from the feed there, the Ed Award MSY Living Allowance tables. And you'll also notice that we're now in this folder tab and no longer in the feed, so it moved us over into there. So it just shows you a lot of other living allowance pieces. You know, in Wigio, what we try to do is have resources placed logically where you would be looking for them. We do have redundant resources on there. So you'll see this Ed Award, MSY, and Living Allowances. It's in the Living Allowance folder, but you'll also likely find it in an Ed Award folder. So there's not necessarily just one place where files are located. You might find them in multiple locations, and that's all right. So just going back to the feed real quickly, please use this as a resource for you. Post here. This is the Serve Wisconsin group, so we have most all program directors, some finance people in there. You'll see there's 53 people in this group. So if you have a question, you can post something there. I know the program directors also have their own group, so if you're afraid that Serve Wisconsin will be seeing your question and how they'll look down upon you for what question you're asking, you can also ask them on that group. I don't know who the contact person is to get you into that group, but I think Dominique made a comment that she'd be able to help you out with that. So if anyone needs to be added, please feel free to reach out to her. And so you can post a variety of things to your files, all of these events, links. So please start to do that. Now moving on quickly to the folder tab. So this is where you'll find a lot of resources. This is something we're really trying to keep updated. with most resources. We have the new website, which I'll show briefly today as well, where some resources are located. But you can expect the vast majority, even resources that are on our website, to also be stored somewhere here. So right when you load on into the folder, we're in the general Serve Wisconsin folder tab. I like to sort this right away by name. I think the default is it goes by date uploaded, but this seems more like a easy way to find things. This is more general amounts, things you can find in here. The program pictures, I encourage you to use if you have pictures that you're taking on a regular basis. It's really easy to just upload a bunch there instead of trying to email them to us or something like that. We also have this program director resource sharing. So you have your own PD group, but you can also use that folder for specific documents that you're trying to share with folks. But the thing I want to spend the majority of the time on is the program resources folder. So this folder was originally created for the PD handbook, and I will also show you where the PD handbook is in a little bit. That'll be what I'll reference. A lot of the requirements that you'll have or questions that you might have as you're going throughout the program year, hopefully most of those will be addressed in the PD handbook. It's very long, but it's searchable, and so I'll show you how to use that as well. But there's a lot in here, and once again, I said that things are redundant. There were some pieces that I wanted to show you. So once again, Encore, we posted a lot of those Encore resources that are on their site also here. And let's see. Oh, yes, I promised to show you the progress reporting instructions. So if you're looking for those, you can just, so now we're in the program resources tab, and then I went to progress reporting, and so it loaded those. So you'll see here, we're in the process of updating a lot of things from the 14-15 program year to the 15-16. We're still in the 14-15 program year for most programs, so I know a lot of people have their minds set on the 15-16 year already, but we'll try to upload this 15-16 documents as early as possible, but also maintain the 14-15 ones there for a while. Usually there's not a ton of change between these yearly documents, but you never know. So just to show you how detailed this is, so this is a PDF, so it opens straight away in PDF format. And all those requirements for progress reporting, there's a lot of things, but it goes through in, reporting. There's also those there. Check real quick to make sure there weren't other things that I was going to show you. Oh yes, sample checklist. So if we go back, I'm back in the Program Resources tab here. And I like how this is organized, but if you have any concerns about where something is or just doesn't make sense, you can to one of us folder here. There is no specific eGrants folder. I was going to mention that with Andrew, that where you would find a lot of eGrants resources, those presentations that I had mentioned earlier, the Embracing eGrants one, you would find that in the enrollment and eligibility one, because a lot of the themes that they're bringing up in the enrollment or in the presentation are related to enrollment, so that's why that one's there. So the other thing I wanted to, one of the folders I wanted to show you in here is the sample program forms. So this is something we've recently been working on to update more of these so that you at least forms to go to when you're looking to, you know, making a healthcare request form, or, you know, your host site monitoring, you're looking to start, you're going to be doing that or revising them. These are at least resources that you can go to as a start. A lot of things you'll want on there, you want to make sure whether they're specific to either the program they came from, because in most cases, the resources that are here would have come from a Serve Wisconsin program, or they were created as examples, so they might be really basic. So you certainly want to adapt them to your use, but they are a starting point. And we'll also post like best practice things there, so you can find, you know, resources. So this is in the criminal history checks folder. We have a sample tracker. So tomorrow and August 11th are PD meetings. So if you'll be in the PD meeting tomorrow or on the 11th, we're going to talk about criminal history check requirements there. So I don't want to burden you too much with requirements that we're going to start with the new program year, but if you're going to be using a tracker, which we'll talk about in the PD meetings, this is one that you could start to use as a sample tracker. So I'm going to go back into the program resources. You saw a lot of those sample items there, and so you know where to look when you're trying to create something new. And then the other piece I want to show you on here right now is, well, I guess real quickly, there are in these folders, I've kind of been moving a lot to have things be links, especially corporation resources, because the corporation is updating a lot of those resources regularly. So if you ever find a broken link on there, be sure to let us know. But uniform guidance, this is 2 CFR. You'll find all of this as we're moving into the next program year. A lot of this will be important for you all. So I don't know why this toolbar is coming into the middle of our screen, but there you have it. So now I'm going to show you the PD handbook, or I'll pause to take some questions as I look for the PD handbook. Actually, I know the PD handbook's not in the program resources. Or actually, sorry, briefly I'll go over the calendar. So those are the 3 main tabs that you have in Wigio: the feed, the folder, and the calendar. Each year we put out paper documents related to our calendars, but we're going to work hard to update a lot of, whether it be deadlines or events, to have them on Wigio and also in our Serve Wisconsin website. There's a Google Calendar located there. Since it is, I'll show you that as well. Since it is a Google Calendar, you can share that with yourself, and then you can see all. If you're using a Google Calendar yourself, you can see. Apparently, I can't scroll down here, but this is the Google Calendar. It's kind of cut in half. I think this must be an Internet Explorer issue, but this is essentially the same that you'll see. The events that you'll see on this page, our Serve Wisconsin page, will be the same that you see in Wigio here. So we're going to be working hard to make sure those two are up to date and in sync, and that you'll be seeing any deadlines or important events that will be coming through there. So although we do put out the paper ones, we hope that these electronic ones will be more up to date and more accessible to you whenever you have a question when something is. And so if you have an event you'd like to add, please do add that there. So moving back to the folder, I'm going to at least open the PD handbook and we'll come back to it. So I'm just going back up to the top. I'm just in the Serve Wisconsin AmeriCorps folder, the base one. We were in the program resources earlier, and as we continue to scroll down, you'll find some loose items in here that aren't in folders. This main one is the granddaddy of them all. It's the Program Director Handbook. You'll see a modified date there, which Jessica posted most recently. And so this is that. So I wanted to show you, we're in the process of updating this as we go. We're trying to make it a living document, but there's a lot of things that require changing for this upcoming year, so we likely won't have it ready before the program year begins, but that's why when it gets posted to Wigio, we'll make sure you know that a new Program Director Handbook has been coming out. But you should be using this as a resource for you. It comes in PDF format, so if you have, let's say, a question related to exiting members, so you'll search, and this is how we want you to use this function. This table of contents is clickable, so you can, see exiting members. This probably looks pretty small for you all. Try to zoom in. Exiting members. Oh, great. I want to know more about that. So up at the top, you'll see the section number, and then we also have where the resources are for pieces for where this information is coming from. So some of it's coming from the provisions and some of it's coming from the law. And this is clickable, you'll see here. That'll open up the actual law if you want to read more about it. Or this is also. And in many sections, we also have where there's more information on the paper form, or any item. So you'll see these links scattered throughout as well. But please use that search function because it'll return a lot of hits for you based on your question. And that'll be a good way for you to use the PD handbook. I know we have about 15 minutes here. Just going to try to blow through some other pieces. Move back. Any questions on those resources right now? Right. So just quickly, national service criminal history checks. Just want to emphasize how important those are. It's important that you have you'll see this reference later in the presentation, but the message from the corporation's CEO, Wendy Spencer, has been the checks are to be done on time, every time, so that moving forward, there was possibly some leeway in criminal history checks in the past, but now there's really no grace. So we want you to really focus. If you are wondering or if you're onboarding members and you're not sure what part of the process you have issues with, or if you're not sure who receives what checks, I would first check out the PD handbook. That section 6.2 has a lot. It goes through all the basics, what's required, you know, what's required based on who has recurring access or not. There's a table in there. It breaks it down. The resources page, opening up this real quick. This is the knowledge network, or as we term it, that. It's now all being funneled into the National Service.gov resources page. But I also wanted to show you this to show you that all these resources on the left-hand side, there's a lot of topics here, but this criminal history check resources page has a lot, especially this frequently asked questions page. It's actually a PDF, sorry. There's a lot of good information there on criminal history checks. This page continues to go on and detail each check, like NSOPW, states, FBI's, so that you can learn more about that. And there's a lot to highlight was this training course. So if you're new or just looking for a refresher, the training course goes through some scenarios, challenges you a little bit. We know that these resources, especially as you read through the PD handbook on that, that it'll seem simple at first, but then as you get more into it and things start, and it becomes, you're actually applying it to the field, it starts getting a little more complex. So use those resources first. When in doubt, always, I would say always print things out, make sure dates are on them, and that way you're at least preserving documentation. And if you're unsure whether you're doing something right or not, ask your fellow PDs, look to the resources, or ask us at Serve Wisconsin. And then the last link on here, or bullet point, is there's also a criminal history check folder in Wigio in the program resources. So you'll find even more there. These, I just wanted to, since this presentation will be posted, you can read a lot of this text, and this is way too much text to read through right now. We already talked briefly about what happens if you're trying to use paper forms for the AmeriCorps enrollment form. Andrew went through how you're enrolling members. And so you have more on that. So this slide right here, I'm going to show you, if you're wondering, there's just so many requirements, I don't know where to go to. This slide right here and a lot of things that you'll find on this presentation were taken from a resource that's on Wigio. They're checklists that were created a while back, but that are still valuable resources for you if you're just trying to see what requirements you have for getting members started or getting your program started. So I'm going to move back, sorry. We're going to move back to my screen here, and I'm going to show you really quickly where, so I'm going to go to program resources, where these checklists are that I'm referencing. We also will have a new checklist for you. So as I mentioned, these checklists that I'm going to present to you right now are a little outdated, but in the PD meetings, Jessica has created a new resource with the help of a lot of PDs based on a request from some of the PDs as well. And it'll go through a lot of the requirements for member enrollment and all of what's required for you at the beginning of the year. So it's going to be a great resource for you as you're just trying to wonder what actually is all required at the beginning of the year. So that consolidates it for you. So here are these checklists. They're in Word format, so I'm going to go ahead and download it really quickly and open it and show it to you. So I know this may be a little overwhelming with all the information that's here in this checklist, but and a lot of it will be referenced. If you're just starting to get going, you're trying to get all your feet wet a little bit, these startup checklists are a great way to begin. And then all right, wonderful. And on our website, there's also, so if you get through all this and you're a little hazy on how you're concerned how your member files look, feel free to monitor your own files. We have our member file checklist that we post on our website that will be available to you. So if you're just not sure if everything's exactly right, please feel free to do that yourself, and that will just make sure that you have squeaky clean files. I know that it takes some time, but it's certainly valuable to make sure you have them all correct. Once again, this will be posted, so you'll see these exiting member checklists, or at least steps. There's some really good information more on exiting members. I even searched that in the PD handbook, so use that as well. So these are the take-home points. I believe, National Service Criminal History checks, we will reference that over and over and over again. Please, please, please do those correctly. We know it's difficult and that the system is complex, but we're not in a position where we can do much if something's not right there. So do everything in your power to make sure everything is done on time every time. Do it early. The NSOPW and WCCA checks that are required, those can be done at any time, and they're simple printouts. They're really easy to do, so get those done. We also oftentimes encourage our PDs and finance directors, for that matter, to use their peers. We really are happy that the PDs have taken initiative to have the PD Association and have their own WIGIO group. We think that's a great way for you all to start sharing. But we have this PD and FD contact list that will go out with contracting. We're in the process of taking that for the 15-16 year. But once that gets done, use that. People's contact information is there. I think everyone on that list would welcome a phone call or email from a fellow Serve Wisconsin grantee. And then just to emphasize, once again, to use WIGIO for your questions or resources. And lastly, to mention that when you're receiving emails from Serve Wisconsin, please attend to those in a timely manner if you're able to. We know that you do get a lot of emails and a lot from us, but some of that is time-sensitive material. And oftentimes we find that programs will run into issues or be confused when it was actually an email that was originally sent. So, when in doubt, if you have a question or specifically related to a topic that we're addressing through email, it's likely in there. So try to read those carefully if possible. Before I go over to questions, I quickly want to show you where some resources are on our on our Serve Wisconsin page. I would imagine a lot of you have been there already. But if we just go to our Serve Wisconsin page, this is new, but if you scroll down, a lot of topics will be, these are some main pieces that are being put through, but a lot of our fairly recent updates will come as you scroll down at our Governor's Service Recognition in June. Then there's also more resources for your program. You'll also see the PD handbook here, and also a lot of our monitoring tools. So this is where, as I was talking about the member file review, you'll find all of our monitoring documents here. So, and those will be regularly updated. So here it is. This is the exact. This is the exact checklist that we use when we're monitoring your files. Go through members as you'd like. You want to internal. This is one. Well, we have just under. I want to be mindful of the time. I know there's a lot that you guys are going to be doing because it's early August. So we'll move on to questions. We have, if not all of us, at least most of our program officers here. So I think they've been answering a lot of questions through the chat box. Thank you for doing that, everyone. But you can ask any question now in the chat box, or just mention that you'd like to be unmuted, and I will go through and unmute you. Okay, it doesn't look like we're getting too many questions. I apologize for having to go through that very fast. I hope you know now where some important resources are. Just to mention also, I referenced a lot the PD handbook and the WIGIO resources. But the corporation has very, very solid resources that are going to be your base when you're looking for answers. So on WIGIO we have a lot of links to corporation resources. So whether it be the national policy FAQs, or there's actually a how you're going to manage your AmeriCorps program page on the corporation's website. So those links are on there as well. And I wish I could show you all of those right now, but it's a little bit difficult with technology and time. So with that, I'm just going to thank everyone, and I'll stay on for a little bit longer for any further questions that people have. If you'd like to specifically have me show you any other resources while we have this little connection going, I will do that. And you can feel free to exit whenever. Thanks, guys.